All right, guys. So now we're going to talk about escaping the side control position. Some of the things that we are going to do are actual almost positional shortcuts. So things I can execute with my arm to kind of undo his ability to control me in the position. And there's going to be some tips about how to pre-position yourself early on and even what to do once you're out of position. Okay? One of the things we should first know about side control is if I am flat, okay, my opponent is going to be able to put a lot of pressure on my chest. Okay? Regardless of what structure he uses with his hands, whether he's controlling my head or he's under my arm, it doesn't matter. Once I am flat, with my back completely flat to the ground, he can apply as much pressure just by laying on top of me as he wishes. Okay? So the first thing that I want to get in the habit of doing is anytime I'm in side control, I want to build the habit of always trying to turn towards my opponent and keeping my arms in like a T-Rex position here. Okay? So my body in as much of a block as I can. So that way when my opponent arrives here, again, regardless of how he chooses to position his hands, when he drops weight, now he's dropping the weight across my shoulder line and I'm able to breathe and I'm not as uncomfortable in the position as I would be if I were flat. Okay? Now, one of the first things that we can do before we even get into executing structured movement here is we can do something we already learned in the mount. We can do a leg escape. We can shrimp our way to our guard. So if my hands are here and my opponent lands on me, all I have to do is shrink my butt away just like I did if he was mounted, insert the bottom knee in between us, and now rotate my hip to the other side so I can circle my foot out and get my guard. Okay? So it's a movement that we're already familiar with from the previous position, that if we fall into the side control position and we are correctly structured, we can immediately execute a movement to get us back to our guard. Okay, guys, so the first escape that we're going to do starts with optimal position. Okay, so what's going to happen during this escape series is I'm going to progressively get myself in a worse spot, and it's going to take a little more effort to extricate myself. Okay, so when we begin here, I've done a lot of things correct. I've stayed on my side, and when my opponent arrives, I have his head controlling arm blocked, okay, and my other arm underneath him. So it's very simple for me now to just immediately shrimp away to create a little space, pummel my arm in for my underhook, which goes all the way across his back, okay? You have a freedom of choice here of either going high over the back towards the armpit or low towards the hip, okay? Now I'm gonna continue to shrimp a little bit so I can turn over. If when I turn over, he has not wrapped my arm, I'm going to tuck my chin and do a quick duck and shrug my shoulders. That allows me to get here, and now I'm in an excellent position where I'm going to be able to take his back later on. Okay? If, however, I'm here, I execute my movement, and now I pummel my underhook, and my opponent identifies that as a potential path to his back, he's going to put what's called a wizard on. He's going to wrap my arm. So now, when I come up, I have no path to his back anymore. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this hand and base far away because my opponent is likely to push into me. Okay, so I don't want to fall over. I want to take a good base hand. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take away any chance of him moving in behind me by stepping up the leg that's in between us. Okay? And now when my opponent pushes into me, I'm going to shoot my bottom leg through so that I can close my full guard. Okay, guys, so for our second escape now, what I have is not an underhook position, but rather a frame under my opponent's neck. So I'm starting to kind of end up with a timing that's not working for me so well, or he's getting a little further ahead of me into the position where I don't end up in the ideal spot. Okay, so I'm able to get on my side, but by the time that Josh is on top of me, I'm able to just block his head and kind of sink my arm under his neck. Okay, so what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna push into his neck, but my intention is not to push Josh away because I don't want to count on my strength for anything here, and my opponent could be much, much larger, so where pushing with all my effort won't move him an inch. So the intention of pushing into his neck is just to maintain the position that we currently have. So as I put pressure in his neck, now I'm gonna shrimp away. And when I shrimp away, I create a space underneath us, to which, in this instance, my opponent has no reaction. If my opponent has no reaction to the space that I just created, I take that same hand that I'm framing on his neck with, and I'm gonna pummel it under his body to get my underhook. And now my movement is exactly the same as the first escape. I'm turning over to get here to what's called the dogfight position. I'm basing my hand out, stepping my leg up, and if he pushes into me very strongly where I'm falling over, I shoot my leg through and I get my guard. Okay? There is, however, one thing that Josh can do differently, which is here. I'm in my frame position. I've blocked his head and I've got my frame. I shrimp out to create my space. And now my opponent senses that this space exists where I could potentially pummel my arm. So what Josh is going to do is he's going to switch his hips to now close that space. Now there's nowhere for my arm to go, so I can't get my underhook. However, now my frame is a little more effective at pushing Josh away from me. Okay? But again, I don't want to rely on just the strength of my arm. So as I frame on Josh's neck, I'm going to scoot away. Okay? Now, once I'm here, my intention is to pass my leg over Josh's head, right? But I don't want to rely on my flexibility to be able to do this. For example, I'm not particularly flexible. So if I try to get my leg over Josh's head right now, I'd probably just get about there. So what I want to do is I want to exaggeratedly continue to shrimp out until it becomes really easy to just pass my leg over, okay? Now, once I pass my leg over, it's not good enough to just do that. Because if Josh shrugs his shoulder, he'll shrug my leg right off. And now he'll get back on top of me. Okay? So once I frame here and I shrimp away and I pass my leg, I want to cross my feet. So now it's very difficult for Josh to shrug anything off. Now I stretch my legs. When I stretch my legs, Josh is essentially falling over. I sit up and I post here. And now when I'm ready to complete my movement, I uncross my leg and I swing this leg back and come here. Now I get head control on Josh, and I pass my arm for the underhook. And I reverse the position effectively. Now we're going to deal with our third escape. In our third escape, my position is almost as bad as it can be. Okay? I have no underhook. I can't even place a frame under his neck. Josh has effectively isolated my arm. So I'm here. Okay? And my arm is now completely draped over Josh's back. That's a bad spot for two reasons. One, if Josh is a competent Jiu-Jitsu player, he's going to be able to expose submission attacks on that arm. Two, Josh can now apply a lot of body weight to my upper shoulder, which forces me flat. Okay? This is where the importance of your secondary hand is crucial. Okay? This hand has to learn to always live in this pocket, okay? You must always be with your elbows down in this position. And this hand's primary job at first will be to block your opponent's ability to control your head. The absolute worst case scenario is if both my hands are here. Now he has an excellent underhook and he's able to get his bicep all the way to my head. Now he can flatten me completely out and potentially kick my elbow out. And now my arms are totally exposed. I'm totally flat. And he's applying all his body weight on top of me, okay? So this secondary arm has to first live in this pocket, and before my opponent attains a dominant position, I always want to fight for the head control here. Okay? Now the only problem I have on the table is my underhook. Okay? I cannot get in this space, and Josh's head is low enough that I can't get under his neck. So what I'm going to do now is I can't avoid Josh flattening me out. Now I've returned to a position where my hips are effective like an upa. So I'm going to do, just like we previously did in the mount position, a bridge with my hips. As I bridge with my hips, I want to take my bicep towards the crown of Josh's head, and I want to direct his face in the same way that I'm bridging, with the intention of taking my hand and placing the palm of my hand flat on the mat. So I bridge, moving his head out of the way, and I place my palm on the mat. Now, since I've done a good job of blocking his bottom arm from controlling my head, I can pull my arm in underneath us and create the space to get my underhook. From now, I can start escaping like I did before, going to the dogfight position, putting my foot up, reclaiming guard, and I'm back in a good safe spot. Okay? What I want you to avoid, okay, is doing that bridge without blocking the head control. Okay? If I am here and Josh has my head controlled, now I can bridge, I can bring my palm flat to the mat, but I'm gonna run into a big problem on the other side. When I bridge here and I plant my hand, now I have essentially placed myself in a position where Josh is gonna be able to attack me with a really powerful head and arm choke. Okay? So it's very important that I block the head control here so that when I bridge and touch the floor, my other hand is guaranteeing a path for my arm.